Hey, it's Leo. Welcome to my channel. Today I'll be filming my first episode of Queer Reviews for ShoutOUT, but more on that later. I'm not sure what the lighting is doing. Our skies have been a little bit orange from the wildfire smoke, but on the other hand, that's helping block some of the excessive heat we've been experiencing here in Portland, so I guess it's a win. Each week on my channel, I lift up a different nonprofit that's doing good in the world. This week, I'd like to lift up PFLAG in Newberg, Oregon. The school board voted on Tuesday to ban the display of flags, including Pride and Black Lives Matter. Basically, flags they consider political. The Newberg PFLAG chapter is a great chapter, great people. Their mission is to build a community of loving families and allies, to support and educate one another, and to speak up as advocates and tell all hearts and minds are supportive and welcoming of LGBTQ people. So I know the community could use a lot of love, and so I'll be making my donation this week to Newberg PFLAG. I'll link the information in the comments below, and I encourage you to check them out. PFLAG is also a national organization, so I'll also provide the link where you can find a local chapter that you can contribute to. They do a really great work in helping provide support, education, and advocacy, so check them out. So I wanted to mention that one of my subscribers, Amelia Reeds, mentioned that it would be great to also have international charities lifted up. So if you have any recommendations of great international charities that we could check out, please link them in the comments below. I'm looking forward to expanding our conversation about all of the wonderful people that are doing good in the world. I certainly need that reminder that there are good people caring for one another in the world. Speaking of which, I also wanted to give a shout out to Prideville from Central Oregon with this great shirt. This was their awesome Pride t-shirt from this year, and I love it, so I'll link them down below as well. As I mentioned, this week's video is the first in a new series, probably once a month, where I will feature a review of specifically queer books, and this is as a contributor for ShoutOUT. I'm excited to share that I am now a volunteer contributor and joining some other fabulous, amazing contributors to an online social media presence called ShoutOUT. ShoutOUT is volunteer-driven, non-monetized social media outlet that's community-based and shares things like news, education, politics, art, entertainment, book reviews, and so forth, particularly impacting the LGBTQIA+ community in the Pacific Northwest. I will link them down below, and I am excited to be a part of this growing community and conversation in the online space. This week, I'm excited to share 3 books for you written by queer authors that I think you're going to really enjoy. The first is Camp by Lev AC Rosen. This is a queer summer camp rom-com published in 2020 and is 384 pages long. It's a YA book. Camp is the story of Randy Keppelhoff, a Jewish gay musical theater kid who has gone to this Camp Outland, a queer summer camp, every year for 4 years, where he's been crushing hard on Hudson Aronson Lim, who is a mask for mask kind of gay guy and has never noticed Randy. So Randy spends a year getting ready for the following summer, cuts his hair, loses weight, gets into sports, learns how to butch it up, and when he gets to summer camp, he's ditched the fingernail polish, the unicorn sheets, and does not sign up for theater, and instead signs up for sports and has a goal of getting Hudson to be his boyfriend. Not just a fling, but a long-term boyfriend. Right at the beginning of the story, it works. Hudson falls for him. It's a little bit insta-lovey, but falls for him, or at least is attracted to him and interested in him physically. And this is Randy's dream. His plan is to then get Hudson to fall for him, and then he'll reveal who he truly is. And this book explores his journey with that, as well as his friends and counselors' frustration with his giving up of himself in order to pursue this love interest. This book explores internalized homophobia, the mask femme gender expression, self-expression, acceptance. It has a diverse cast of characters. As I mentioned, Randy is Jewish, Hudson is half Korean. We have George, one of the best friends, who's of Middle Eastern descent. Ashley, another best friend, is a demisexual lesbian. We have a counselor who is a trans woman, I believe an Olympian athlete. And we also have characters who are asexual, non-binary, Afro-Brazilian. There's a great variety of diversity on the pages here. The setting was also really well written as this cool summer camp. I know many folks would love to go to a camp as affirming and cool as this one is. The summer camp also included little history sections as one of the sessions, in addition to s'mores and the canoe trip, etc. And it was real life history as part of our LGBT past, which I thought was really great and a great way to kind of share some of that. There were some really interesting presentations and conversations about gender expression and the policing of that, but it wasn't, I don't think, heavy-handed or like now we go to the nonfiction section of the story. It was really beautifully woven in there. The camp is very sex positive and there is teen sex on page, so just be aware of that. Some of the kids in the camp, like they haven't met any other there aren't a lot of queer kids in the communities that they're from. I can imagine young queer readers being in the same boat as some of these campers and having questions about sex that this may help answer. And I did appreciate that condoms were also a very normal part of this sex positivity. The characters are great. I really loved George and Ashley, the two best friends, as well as Hudson's best friend, Brad. The camp counselors were fabulous, particularly Mark, the theater counselor, and Connie, the track counselor. They were great characters. Overall, this is a thoughtful, affirming, diverse read that was also a lot of fun, and I give it 4.5 stars. Also, if you're interested in a queer summer camp in real life, there is one in Minnesota that's a Christian organization that's called the Naming Project that I know many folks speak very highly of. I'll link them down in the description box below. They do have some youth programming, and I believe they've added adult programming, at least in the pre-pandemic times. And let me know if you have other queer summer camp suggestions that you would like to provide to the people who are checking out this channel. The next book I'd like to recommend is Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars, a dangerous trans girl's confabulous memoir. This is by Cheng, Thom, and this is the story of a young Asian trans girl who runs away from home from the city of gloom and leaves to go to the city of smoke and lights, where she then finds a group of trans women that take her in on the Street of Miracles, which is the pleasure district in that city. This is a gorgeously written creative narrative about a trans woman's experience. It is thought-provoking and asks us to consider what kind of stories we tell about trans women. The narrator feels that we often tell stories principally of trans women who are white and wealthy and can have a lot of surgeries and other assistance, or the stories of trans women who have died. This is a different kind of story, she tells us. This is a story about strong women and sisterhood and fighting back. It also contains a lot of fantastic elements, including ghosts and mermaids. In this story, towards the beginning, when a trans woman is murdered on the Street of Miracles, which unfortunately is not unusual, the trans women then band together to form a group for vigilante justice. Our unnamed narrator is an expert in Kung Fu, and even though she's a teenager, she then fits in very well in helping this group reach their goals. This book does address transphobia and violence against trans women and the inaction of the community or police to stop it. It also includes some police violence, sexual assault, and self-harm, but none of these have the last word in the story. There are really interesting conversations about privilege, about love, and her role as a sibling to the little sister she left at home when she ran away. This is a short but powerful story that lives up to the narrator's desire to tell a different kind of trans memoir. I give this book 4.5 stars and I highly recommend it. The final book on this video is Sister Outsider, a collection of essays and poems by Audrey Lorde. This book is 190 pages and was published in 1984. This is an incredibly powerful selection of essays and speeches written by Lorde. She was, unfortunately she's deceased, was a Black woman feminist from the US, and this book helps dissect those different aspects of her identity as well as her experiences traveling internationally. Some of the essays I felt spoke directly to me, and some I felt more that I was not the intended audience. They were either essays towards the Black feminist community or conversations of Black women towards the Black community in general. So for those, I listened and learned and greatly appreciated them as well. I underlined so much of this book, so much that was still unfortunately relevant about racism and homophobia and misogyny. And it's so important. She talks about fear and keeping silent and speaking out, about fighting despair and finding hope and taking action. She talks about understanding the things that make us different and not glossing a movement over by saying that we are all the same. For example, in feminism, by saying that well, all women's experiences are the same. She says no, she challenges this. The experience of Black women are different. Even then, if you add layers of class and gender identity and sexual orientation, those add layers of oppression that make the experiences and oppressions different for each of these different folks. Some of the parts that I underlined were when she's in a conversation with Adrienne Rich and talking about when white people ask for examples of racism in an attempt to understand. She says that asking for proof in that way really puts up a barrier to perception and allows us to continue in our inaction, which I thought was a really powerful statement. She also speaks to how white people often expect Black people to do the education and emotional labor around the topics of racism, and addresses the guilt or defensiveness we may feel when hearing about racist actions. She gives us a call to move beyond that, as well as a call to fight despair, to leave behind infighting so that we can unite and fight against our oppressors. I'm so tempted to read to you so many of the quotes that I underlined, but instead I'm going to ask you to please read this book. The first essay was about her trip to Russia, which wasn't what I was expecting, and it probably wasn't until maybe a quarter of the way in that I started my underlining frenzy. So if you're not immediately drawn in, please keep going, because this is incredible and powerful and important. This is definitely recommended reading. I'm thankful for her guidance, and I'm sad that we lost her far too soon. I give this one 5 stars. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Please leave me a comment below and like or subscribe if you're so inclined. Don't forget to check out ShoutOUT. I'll leave the links in the description box below. And until next time, happy reading.